For 12 years, Cross the Nations have been travelling the globe, carrying a cross and a message of love and hope. They've seen God do the impossible and change the lives of countless people. But now it's time to hear the truth. It's time to hear the story of Cross the Nations. So Mike Allen, over the last however many weeks, we've been hearing about these amazing miracles, amazing times when you've been in the right place at the right time, God's intervened, God's changing people's lives. And I'm sure for everyone watching, they're thinking that it's probably all sunshine and rainbows and that you never have any problems while you're out there. But in reality, that I know that's probably not the case. So I wanted to ask you, are there any times when you've felt threatened or you've come up against opposition or people have been quite hostile towards you?
Okay, well, I'll tell you the life-threatening one in a minute. But I was in Ireland, of course. That's where I sort of cut my teeth with the whole crosswalking thing. And very early on in the crosswalk, in terms of, it was 21 days, the whole walk from Galway to Bangor Belfast. But I think in the second day or the third day, on my walk, I was walking in a place called, I think, Hallamady, somewhere like that. And I could see a pub in the distance, and there was a guy outside the pub, and he was sort of like, with hand signs, sort of like saying, "Do you want a drink? Do you want a drink?" And it was really boiling hot, and I was like, "Yeah, I definitely do." But I was getting excited because I thought, great opportunity to witness here. You know, he's going to invite me in, and I'm going to get a chance to share the gospel. I was thinking he's obviously interested in what I'm doing. I had no idea that I was walking into a trap. So he helped me with the cross into the bar, and it was a right palaver because we had to go through 2 or 3 double doors, and we had to try and get the cross, navigating the cross around the corner into the bar, and it was a right old ordeal. And so once we got into the bar, all the fellas sat around the bar, you know, like typical Irish bar. They're all sort of looking round at me and sort of making comments about the cross. And then one guy got up, came over to me, and just unleashed this barrage of abuse, like really verbally beat me up and was calling me all sorts of names, which I can't mention. You know, he got right up in my face and was swearing at me and shouting at me. And then he sort of finished, and another guy came over. It was like a tag team. And this particular guy, like venomously started saying to me, "Do you think what you're doing is going to make any difference at all? Do you think anybody's going to bother looking at you? It's going to make no difference at all. No one's going to believe in God because of what you're doing." And I was like, whoa. You know, if the devil could have said anything to me to discourage me, yeah, it was those words. You know, it's going to make no difference at all what you're doing. And this carried on, you know, and then someone else, and then a group of guys were mocking and laughing. You know, it was a real mocking that was going on in there. And I felt really small, you know, we're like, dude, like, you know, like felt really small, yeah, as it was going on. And I just thought, I need to get out. I've just got to get out of it, you know, because this isn't good at all. So I put my rucksack on and I started to try and get the cross out of the bar. But it was such an ordeal getting it in, and I had help. But going out, no one was going to help me. Do you know what I mean? It was like, you know, and I think at one point I fell over the cross, and it was humiliating. You know, You know, they were all laughing. No one was helping me. And it took ages for me to try and get the cross, because it's 12 foot long, round the corner, out the door. But eventually I did it. And as I came out of the bar, my sister-in-law, who her husband is the pastor of the church that I started from in Galway, she just decided that day that she was going to go on a bit of a road trip and see if she could find me. Because it had been a couple of days. I've been walking now for a couple of days. They hadn't heard from me. And she just thought she was going to go and find me. And she turned into this actual street and pulled over on the side of the road to look at her map. And I come out of the bar over the road from her. And she looks up and there I am, coming out of this bar.
Unbelievable.
Across. And she must have noticed, you know, I must have looked really sorry for myself. You know, I must have looked really discouraged. And she'd actually brought a load of blister plasters with her, because you know, on the first day, if you remember episode 1, I mentioned that I'd kind of like incurred this really bad mother of all blisters under my foot that later on got infected, but that's another story altogether. So she had some blister plasters, which brought a bit of relief for me. And she prayed for me that God would encourage me. And, you know, I felt like really ministered to by her. The timing of it was amazing. I was back on the road. I was praising God. I was walking down the road with a cross at my shoulder again. And I think I'd only walked about a mile, and I got into a brilliant opportunity, witnessing opportunity, in which the fellow that I was talking to came to Jesus right there on the street.
Wow.
This was just like an hour later. So I went from like the depths of discouragement to like walking on cloud 9 within an hour. And that's the battle of Crosswalk. That's what it's like.
Yeah.
There's a spiritual battle that's raging, and the devil wants to discourage you and get you to never ever try again.
And Mike, on that, after that, wasn't it raining after that, and you had to take shelter in a derelict pub or something?
Yeah, I mean, it was just straight after I met that fellow and he came to the Lord. You know, the heavens opened, and in only like the way Ireland can, it rained. Like buckets of water was coming down on my head. You know, it was just crazy. I was soaked to the bone. I remember seeing this derelict pub, and there was a few sort of like umbrellas with holes in, you know, in the beer garden. And I'd gone in there and I sat on one of the tables under one of these umbrellas trying to get some shelter. And I took my boots and socks off, and this blister was so bad. And I'm just looking at it. It's pouring a rain. I've got no money. I'm sat under an umbrella. I'm in the middle of nowhere, right? And I'm thinking, what now? The church that I started at in Galway, there was a young fella that couldn't make the service, but he asked the pastor if it was possible that he could walk with me for a day. And I'm sitting under the umbrella having no idea that this guy's looking for me in his car. And eventually, I don't know how long I sat there for. I think it was only about 20 minutes. But he was looking through the gate of the beer garden at me. Big, tall, 6'4" farmer's son, strapping young lad. And he said, "Are you Mike Vickers?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I've been looking for you." He said, "I've been driving up and down looking for you." He said, "I've just wondered whether I could walk with you for the day." And it was like, wow, it was God's provision. Do you know what I mean? He carried the cross for most of the day while I just limped by the side of him. And he got me into the next town where God opened up some more like miraculous provisions for me.
Yeah, the timing's incredible on both those things. I mean, the fact that your sister-in-law had no idea where you were going to be, and just so happens to pull over to look at a map, and out you walk from a bar, having just been like verbally assaulted, or have you? Only God can put something together like that. Amazing. So, Alan, has anything ever happened to you?
Yeah, I mean, not perhaps quite as dramatic as some of those things, but I was in Spain walking from Gibraltar to Malaga, and it was a couple of days in, and I was walking towards a town called Estepona, and I was kind of like on the main road, and there was a bus stop, and there was a bit of a gravelly pull-in, like a car park almost. And I was walking by there, and these two old ladies pulled in a Toyota 4x4. I have a lot of experiences with Toyota 4x4s. It's good and bad. But they pulled in this Toyota 4x4 and got out, and I started talking to them, but they were really angry with what I was doing. They were like offended by the fact that I was carrying the cross. And they said, you're insulting Jesus. You're just doing this for money. You're just trying to draw attention to yourself. And like they were being really, they were just really offended by what I was doing. And I was just trying to be, I can't remember the words I used now, but I was just trying to be calm the situation, just like, oh, please, just calm down. Just let me just say. And they go, no, we don't want to hear what you've got to say. And I realised I wasn't going to get anywhere with them. And sometimes when you're in those situations, it's very rare that you're in those situations where you're thinking, there's no point talking to these people. They're not going to listen. I'm just going to go. So I just started heading off. And then I felt something thud on the back of my backpack. And I looked round, and these two ladies had started to pick up stones, and they were throwing them at me.
Oh my goodness.
And it was like, what's going on? And then there's about 3 people at the bus stop. They were saying, I mean, it was in Spanish, so I don't know what they were saying, but I'm assuming they were saying, like, get him. Do you know what I mean? And so these people, they're throwing stones at me. And I'm thinking, oh, my goodness, I just got to get out of it. So I just kept walking down the hill, and stones were kind of, a couple hit my rucksack, and they were landing by my feet and stuff like that. And I just kept walking. But it really shook me up. There was part of me at one point where I thought I could have wrestled these 2 old ladies to the ground and took them out. But I thought that would have looked really good. You can imagine it being in the newspaper the next day. Man with cross beats up 2 old ladies. It's just like, I knew I couldn't do that. I just had to just get out of there and move on. But I laugh about it now, and it is funny. It's a funny kind of situation, and I laugh about it now. But at the time, it really shook me up. It was quite intimidating. It was upsetting. I remember I walked probably for, 15 minutes or so, and I came to a restaurant, and like I just knew I needed to go in there and have something to eat and a drink, and just kind of calm myself down and settle myself down, because I'd got all kind of worked up and stewed up about it, because I know it sounds stupid that it was only 2 old ladies really, but I'd been quite intimidated. I've been run out of town.
3 years ago, I was walking from Gibraltar to Malaga on this very road, and at this spot where there's a bus stop just behind me, 2 old ladies pulled in a 4-wheel drive and got really offended by the cross. So much so that they managed to encourage the people at the bus stop to start throwing stones at me, to drive me out of town. They thought that I was insulting the cross. They thought that I was bringing Christianity into disrepute, but really they wouldn't give me a chance to explain that I've come with the message of Jesus Christ, of love and forgiveness and grace. And I laugh now. It was scary at the time, and then afterwards it was funny, but I've got some stones in my hand, and as I just release these stones, I want to release these people and say, Father, I freely forgive all those people who ran your messenger out of town. I pray, Lord, that for this nation, that no matter how many people feel towards Jesus Christ, I pray that there would be a turning back to God in this nation, in Jesus' name. Amen.
So that's quite an intense thing that's happened to you there, Alan. It'd be bad enough if one person threw stones at you, but to have like have a group of people doing that, it's pretty intimidating. Pretty intimidating stuff. But Mike, you said before about having like a life or death situation happen. What was that about?
Yeah, a friend of mine who's a pastor in the East End of London was taking a team out to St. Lucia, where he planted a church many years ago. And he asked me if I wanted to come out and bring the cross. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And even though we concentrate on Europe, it was sort of a one-off, and he's a friend, so I decided to go. And the plan was that we were going to sleep on the Logos ship, which is part of the OM, Mercy ships, and that was docked in Candaris in St. Lucia. And so while I was there, the captain of the ship asked if I would be willing to take 2 of the young missionary fellas on a crosswalk across the island and do it by faith, like how we normally operate with crosswalk, and just to show them, give them the experience and maybe equip them a bit in evangelism. So we did that. We walked for about 3 or 4 days across the island. And I think on the second day we got to a town called Soufriere, and it was a fishing bay. And we were walking towards some shacks, and there were some young guys sat outside these kind of wooden shacks, and they were gambling. And they were, when we got up close, we could smell that they were smoking some interesting stuff as well. Might be worth me saying at this point that there's a lot of obi on the island. Obi is sort of a form of witchcraft, and it's a mixture of Catholicism and voodoo, which is interesting and practiced quite widespread over the island. Anyway, so we walk in the gauntlet between these lads that were sat down at these little tables, gambling and smoking some drugs. And we walked through the middle, and they kind of looked up from their game, looked up from what they were doing at us, wide-eyed, and so we got past them, and we were going down the hill, and as we were going down the hill, I could hear like some shouting. So I looked over my shoulder, and they were kind of following us down into the bay, shouting, "Blasphemer! Why are you mocking Christ? Jesus never had a will on the end of his cross." And like, yeah. So they were following us, and your first thoughts are, what's going to happen here? And we got down into the bay, and there wasn't really anywhere else to go, because then we got to the waterfront, and these guys had come down and they caught up with us. And as we were sort of the final bit of walking, sort of ringleader, the leader of them, as it seemed, was kind of like arguing with me and telling me I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. And it was a blasphemous thing that I was doing. And, I was sort of explaining why we do this, that we're not trying to copy what Christ did. We're just carrying the cross as an opportunity to share God's love with people and share the whole message of why Jesus had to die, but he was having none of it. And so the guys at this stage, they'd sort of like surrounded me, and the 2 young missionary fellas had got pushed out to the edge. And it was just getting out of control. They were shouting, they were pushing in on me. And at one point, kind of the leader said, "We're going to put you on the cross." And I was like, really? This is not happening. I just thought, this is crazy. This isn't real. But he went off and he came back. And I just remember him opening this dirty white carrier bag and showing me. And inside was like a club hammer and these rusty long nails. And I'm thinking,
wow,
no way. This is ridiculous. But it kind of moved, you can imagine, can't you? It sort of moved into another level of kind of threat. And I remember thinking, I need to say something. I need to do something. And I'd like to tell you that I was like, in control and in full of faith and getting ready to command them in the name of Jesus. But to be absolutely honest, that weren't the case. I was like, what do I do? What do I do? But at that moment where I was thinking, what shall I do? The only way I can explain what happened next was, if you're in a factory with a lot of loud machinery and someone goes over to the wall and unplugs them all and the machines just go, Doo. That's exactly what happened. It's like simultaneously, they all just stopped. They all calmed down and they just turned around and walked up the hill together. And I was like, what just happened? And the 2 young fellas, like, they were shaking, they were like shaking on the other side of the road. And they came over to me and said, "What did you say?" And I was like, I didn't say anything. Come on, you must have said something. I said, no, I didn't say anything. And, picked the cross up and carried on walking, and we walked in silence for a little while. Do you know what I mean? It's like stunned at what just happened. But a couple of days later, we eventually got back to the ship where we were staying, and they had satellite phones, and it had been a while since I'd spoken to my wife, and I rang my wife, and as soon as she heard my voice, she kind of stopped me in my tracks and said, before you say anything, she said, I wrote this down so we would remember the time and what happened. She said, I need to ask you what happened on Wednesday evening at 5 p.m. And I was like, Wednesday evening, and I couldn't think for the moment what had happened on Wednesday evening. And it wasn't that I'd forgotten this incident, because that was, I was ready to tell her about it. You know what I mean? But Wednesday evening didn't really. So I said, what? Why'd you ask? She said, well, 5 p.m. on Wednesday, she said, Bethany, the youngest, who was about 7 at the time, she come running into the kitchen and she said, Mummy, we must pray for Dad. He's being bullied.
So I was about 7 years old, and Mum, Ben and Jake were in the kitchen, and I was in the living room playing with my toys. And all of a sudden, it was like I just knew that my dad was in danger. And it was just like God was just warning me that Daddy's being bullied. And so I ran into the kitchen, and I remember saying to Mum that Daddy's being bullied and we need to pray. And she was saying, oh, how do you know? And I said that God's told me. So we started praying for safety and protection over my dad. And as we were praying, it was like God was downloading kind of just images of the scenery where Dad was, and where like everything that was around him. So like the trees and the water and even like the colour of the ground. I could just see it. I couldn't see exactly what was going on, but I could just see where he was. And then so we were just praying for safety for him, and that was that. And that's what I remember.
And while she was telling me this, like the penny dropped, 5 p.m. on Wednesday evening. Of course, there's a 5-hour difference between the UK and St. Lucia. And the penny dropped, 5 p.m. in the UK was 12 noon in St. Lucia, exactly the moment that we walked into Soufriere, into the fishing bay. So incredible, like protection, supernatural protection, deliverance of God that happened in front of my eyes.
I almost don't know what to say after that. Because it's just like, it is so sort of out there, incredible. Like, you can't make that up. You can't script that kind of stuff. It's just, I find it interesting that the people that have attacked you and stuff have been people who would say themselves that they've got a faith or something. And that makes me wonder then, is that, would you say that that's a religious spirit that's attacked you? And if so, what is that?
I would say 99 times out of 100, we have no problems at all with the people that we meet, with the authorities, with the locals, with people passing through, whoever it is. We have no problems at all. And it's just very rarely something come on. Now, oftentimes we'll get people like laughing at us, mocking at us. I mean, Mike would say the same. If we had £1 for every time someone said Jesus didn't have a wheel on his cross, we would be millionaires. We would be wealthy. But what we tend to do is when people are laughing at us and joking, we just join in. We laugh because it is funny. And I'll be honest with you, if I wasn't doing this myself, I would laugh.
Yeah.
Because some people say, oh, it's ridiculous, it's crazy. And we go, yeah, it is. But God's using it. So I'm quite happy to look a fool for Jesus to do something like this, even though it's not, if you like, 21st century technology, blah, blah, cool, trendy or whatever. I'm happy to look foolish to do this. So what we come back to, I think it does stir something up in people. When people see you walking with the cross, I think there's two things. some people will just want to ignore it and shut it out and pretend it's not there. But then other people have to respond in some way, and it stirs a response in people. Some people will laugh, some people will criticize. And I think if there is that kind of a religious spirit about people, when they see it, they think it's undignified, it's not right, it's not orderly, it's not correct. And it stirs something in people that they feel, I must come against this, I've got to attack this because it's not right and it doesn't fit in with their set of beliefs. So, yeah, from time to time, and sadly often, not often, but occasionally, even in churches, sometimes you'll find that people are offended by what we're doing because it doesn't fit with the order and the way that they see things should be done.
Yeah.
I remember when we were in Belfast, I was in Belfast, and a group of lads were coming out of a subway, and as soon as they saw the image of this guy walking with a cross, you know, one of the fellas shouted out, "I'm Spartacus," and I think I replied, you know, "No, I'm Spartacus," and this went on for a bit, you know, and it was hilarious. And I just slowed down and let them catch up because there's about 8 of them, you know, in their 20s. And so they caught up and they were like around me, around the cross. And, you know, now it was kind of like, who can say the funniest thing? And they were mocking me, you know, but I was laughing as well with them. You know, and it's not that we're mocking what we're doing. It's just that, you know, we can laugh at ourselves. And I think that's really important. In evangelism, that you're able to laugh at yourself as well. But at one point, one of the guys said, "Hang on a minute, are you the fella that's walked from Galway, from the West Coast with this cross?" I said, "Yeah, that's right." Because a couple of days previous, a freelance photographer had taken pictures of me, and he'd handed it over to the Daily Mirror and the Belfast newsletter, and so I was on like front page of one newspaper, second page of another, and there was an article that went out about why I was doing it, and he'd read the article that morning, and he said, "I've read about you." He said, "I think it's amazing what you're doing, mate." He said, "If you've carried that great thing like all the way here," he said, "respect, mate," and he put his fist out to me. And, you know, I just got an opportunity then when they'd calmed down and not laughing anymore. I got an opportunity to just share the gospel with these 8 guys.
Wow.
Side of the road. And it was like you could have heard a pin drop. It was just a special moment. And at the end, one of them said, "Would it be all right if we put the cross up on its end? Is it okay if we just stand it up?" And they weren't mocking at this stage. You know, it weren't like, "Yeah, come on, let's get the cross up and have a laugh." It was really serious. They said, "Can we put the cross up?" And I was like, "Yeah." So they got together and they held the cross up. And it was just like one of those amazing images.
Yeah.
I stood back, you know, as they stand this symbol of God's love and the symbol of reconciliation of man to God. And they held this cross up over this war blood-stained streets of Belfast. And I was like, wow, what a moment. And it was like God was saying to me, you know, "Can I birth a nation in a day?" And I said, "Yes, Lord, you can. You can. Of course you can."
People like find out you're a Christian or, you know, they find out you go to church. They might say this sentence, they might say you're religious. And I always struggle to answer that one because I know what they mean. I know what they're asking. They're asking, you know, have you got faith? But are you religious as a connotation, doesn't it? That it almost feels like when somebody says you're religious, it almost makes you feel like you're just following a set of rules, following a set of principles, when that isn't the case at all. Like our faith, Christianity, our belief in Jesus isn't just following a set of rules or principles. It is a relationship with God that was completely. The only reason that it exists is because Jesus came and did what he did on the cross, and which is, you know, when you walk with that cross, it's a huge reminder of relationship, of the truth that God came down to have relationship with man, and he did it through Jesus being on the cross, through through taking the sin of the world upon himself. And I think, you know, when you walk to certain places, that religious spirit that we mentioned before, that is it's a counterfeit of what Christianity really is, because that isn't relationship. That is rules and principles. It's law. And when people shout blasphemer and things like that, they truly believe that you are blaspheming, that you are mocking, but they have no idea what relationship with God looks like. They have no idea what that is. They're so blinded to it. And I find it so interesting that the two stories you've shared today are from people that obviously are so deceived and so blinded to the truth that they'd rather put you on the cross than believe in the one that was on the cross originally. And I just, it blows my mind. But I was reminded while you were talking today of a song that's done the rounds in the churches for the last couple of years. And it's a song called Surrounded. And the lyrics say, it might look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. And I was just thinking when you were in St. Lucia, Mike, and you had everything going on around you, it looked like you were surrounded and that you'd been left alone. But the truth was far different to that, and you really weren't alone.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really powerful. Really hope you've enjoyed this episode of Cross the Nations. I hope that it's inspiring you and showing you that with God, anything is possible. If you've ever met Mike and Alan along the way and you've got a story, we'd love to hear it. So please get in touch at hello@crossthenations.com. Thanks for watching.